Wrestling icon Hulk Hogan, who rocketed to fame in the 1980s, in the ring transforming the wrestling industry.
Down the line, I had incredible partners like, ooh, yeah.
Hulk Hogan wasn't just the face of wrestling. He was the very embodiment of the industry's power dynamics during wrestling's golden era. Behind his charismatic smile and larger-than-life persona, many wrestlers saw a different side. A man who wielded influence that could make or break careers. While fans cheered his heroics in the ring, backstage, Hogan's reach extended far beyond the spotlight, shaping creative decisions, storylines, and even personal lives. For some wrestlers, fear wasn't about his strength or fame, but the political power he held, which could turn allies into enemies overnight. Understanding why wrestlers were scared of Hogan means diving into the complex mix of loyalty, betrayal, and ambition that defined wrestling's backstage culture for decades. Jesse Ventura, the betrayal that shattered trust. Jesse the Body. Ventura was more than just a charismatic wrestler and color commentator. He was a man who dared to challenge the status quo in an industry that often left its talent vulnerable and exploited. Back in 1986, just as the first WrestleMania was about to shake the wrestling world, Ventura was spearheading an effort to unionize WWE wrestlers. His vision was clear. Wrestlers deserved health benefits, pensions, and better job security. Rights common in other industries, but almost unheard of in wrestling, where performers were classified as independent contractors. Ventura's plan wasn't just about improving his own lot. It was about uniting wrestlers across promotions to force a systemic change. But what he didn't anticipate was the betrayal coming from one of his closest allies, Hulk Hogan. At the time, Hogan was the WWE's crown jewel, earning a salary reportedly higher than all other wrestlers combined at WrestleMania 3. His position afforded him immense influence, which he chose to wield not for the collective good, but to protect his lucrative relationship with Vince McMahon. When Hogan learned of Ventura's unionization plans, he alerted McMahon, effectively sabotaging the movement before it could gain traction. Ventura later described the feeling of Hogan's betrayal as akin to getting punched in the face, a deeply personal wound far beyond professional rivalry. The fallout was brutal. McMahon threatened Ventura with termination, killing the union efforts cold and maintaining the exploitative status quo for decades. Ventura himself was eventually fired in 1990, a move he attributes to Hogan's behind-the-scenes interference. Andre the Giant, the Gentle Giant's complex relationship with Hogan. Andre the Giant was wrestling royalty, towering at 7 feet 4 inches and weighing over 500 pounds. He was an imposing physical presence and a beloved figure in wrestling history. Yet despite his legendary status, Andre found himself caught in a complicated dynamic with Hulk Hogan that was far from the camaraderie fans saw on screen. Their rivalry, culminating in the iconic WrestleMania 3 showdown, was one of wrestling's most memorable moments. But behind the scenes, Andre harbored a deep dislike for Hogan's ostentatious behavior and relentless self-promotion. Unlike Andre, who had quietly built his reputation over years through raw talent and charisma, Hogan's showboating struck Andre as unprofessional and disrespectful to the craft. Andre's disdain was rooted in a genuine concern for wrestling's integrity. He had spent years helping the sport gain respectability and feared Hogan's flamboyant antics would undermine it. This tension added an edge to their relationship beyond scripted rivalry. The backstage politics came to a head during their WrestleMania 3 feud. Andre, who was managed by the savvy Bobby Heenan, turned heel in a shocking storyline twist that climaxed with Hogan body-slamming the Giant in front of a record crowd. Andre's decision to cooperate with Hogan wasn't merely a storytelling choice, it was a business necessity. Hogan's backstage influence was enormous, and opposing him politically risked Andre's standing in the company. Why WWE wrestlers were scared of Hulk Hogan. Professional wrestling is a world built on larger-than-life characters and dramatic storylines. But behind the scenes, where egos clash and careers are made or broken, the dynamics are often far more complex and far more personal. Few figures have loomed as large, both in the ring and behind the curtain, as Hulk Hogan. To fans, Hogan was the ultimate hero, a symbol of wrestling's explosion into mainstream culture during the 1980s and 1990s. But for many wrestlers who shared locker rooms and storylines with him, Hogan represented something far more intimidating. A gatekeeper wielding immense backstage power, capable of controlling creative directions and personal fates with a mere word. The following stories reveal why so many WWE stars, despite their toughness and fame, were wary or downright scared of Hulk Hogan. These aren't just tales of rivalry or professional jealousy. They're deeply human stories of betrayal, ambition, and the brutal realities of navigating wrestling's backstage politics. Bret Hart, the Hitman's long-standing grudge. Bret, the Hitman. Hart is widely respected as one of the greatest technical wrestlers ever, known for his commitment to excellence and his earnest approach to the craft. His relationship with Hulk Hogan, however, has been anything but smooth. At the heart of their decades-long feud lies an incident that exemplified how Hogan's influence could undermine trust and professional respect. The bitter chapter began in 1993, surrounding WrestleMania 9, an event that should have been a career highlight for Hart. He was the reigning WWF champion, a title symbolizing not just victory, but the respect of peers and fans. But when Yokozuna defeated Hart for the championship, what happened next shocked many. Almost immediately after, Hulk Hogan came out and defeated Yokozuna, claiming the WWF championship in a surprise moment. Hart believed there was an unspoken gentleman's agreement that Hogan would eventually lose the title back to him, ideally at SummerSlam, restoring the rightful order and honoring their backstage deal. Instead, Hogan handed the championship back to Yokozuna at King of the Ring, a decision that Hart saw as a betrayal. It wasn't merely about the belt, it was about honesty and respect, the foundations Hart had built his career on. Randy Savage, the mega powers fallout and personal betrayal. If Bret Hart's story is about professional betrayal, Randy Macho Man Savage's relationship with Hogan takes that tension into deeply personal territory. The two men formed one of wrestling's most memorable tag teams, the Mega Powers, with the enchanting Miss Elizabeth managing their alliance. To fans, this partnership was an iconic display of camaraderie and showmanship. But behind the scenes, simmering tensions and insecurities brewed beneath the surface. Savage's fear and resentment toward Hogan weren't just about creative control or career opportunities. They involved matters of the heart. Savage was deeply protective of Elizabeth, who was not only his manager, but also his real-life wife. His paranoia about Hogan's intentions toward her was a constant source of backstage drama. The storyline that unfolded at WrestleMania 5, famously known as the Mega Powers Explode, was a dramatic mirror of the real-life jealousy and rivalry between the two men. Hogan's victory over Savage for the WWF World Heavyweight Championship wasn't just another scripted match. It carried the weight of genuine emotions that had been brewing for years. Years after their in-ring feud, Savage publicly accused Hogan and his then-wife, Linda Hogan, of influencing Elizabeth's decision to divorce him in 1993. Though there was no concrete evidence of any inappropriate relationship between Hogan and Elizabeth, even innocent gestures, like Hogan carrying Elizabeth into the ring during an event, sparked backstage confrontations and fueled Savage's suspicions. Shawn Michaels, creative control clash and professional frustration. Shawn Michaels, known for his storytelling prowess inside the ring, had his own complicated encounter with Hulk Hogan's backstage power. Their brief partnership in 2005 started with promise, but quickly devolved into frustration for Michaels, whose artistic integrity clashed with Hogan's desire for control. Originally, the plan was for a rare babyface versus babyface match, a clash between two beloved heroes. However, Hogan insisted on a more traditional heel versus babyface storyline, forcing Michaels to turn heel for the first time since his 2002 return. This abrupt change didn't sit well with Michaels, who felt the shift was more about Hogan's comfort and control than what made narrative sense. Michaels' frustrations manifested during their SummerSlam match, where he exaggerated his reactions to Hogan's moves. What many saw as unprofessional behavior was actually a subtle protest. Michaels was expressing his discomfort with a system that allowed one performer to dictate creative decisions, sometimes at the expense of storytelling and character development. Scott Steiner. Raw confrontation and lasting resentment. Scott Big Papa Pump. Steiner's relationship with Hogan was defined by open conflict and unfiltered criticism. Known for his fiery temper and directness, Steiner didn't shy away from confronting Hogan's backstage politics head-on. The tension began in 1998 when Steiner turned heel and Hogan allegedly used his creative influence to undermine Steiner's momentum. Steiner was blindsided when he was instructed just minutes before a show to lose his first match as a villain, a decision that disrupted his carefully built heel persona and left him feeling professionally vulnerable. Steiner's response was brutal in public. He openly insulted Hogan, calling him derogatory names and accusing him of holding younger talent back to protect his own status. Their feud simmered for years, culminating in a highly charged 2015 incident at an airport where Steiner confronted Hogan's wife. Though Hogan accused Steiner of threatening violence, surveillance footage cleared Steiner of any wrongdoing. For Steiner, Hogan represented everything wrong with wrestling's backstage politics. An individual whose immense influence wasn't just damaging to careers, but toxic to entire companies. Steiner's outspoken anger made clear that his animosity toward Hogan was about more than personal grievances. It was about systemic issues in wrestling's power structure. Sid Vicious, intimidation beyond physicality. Sid Vicious, a physically imposing wrestler known for his toughness, found himself uniquely vulnerable to Hogan's backstage maneuvering. Their feud ignited during the 1992 Royal Rumble when Sid eliminated Hogan, a completely legitimate wrestling move. However, Hogan's emotional reaction backstage was far from typical. Hogan reportedly returned to the locker room furious, accusing Sid of manipulating crowd reactions against him. This outburst revealed to Sid just how volatile Hogan could be when he felt threatened. More than physical intimidation, it was Hogan's ability to turn personal feelings into political weapons that frightened Sid. At the time, Vince McMahon had been positioning Sid as a potential successor to Hogan's main event status. But Hogan's complaints and influence reportedly stalled Sid's momentum. Despite his imposing size and skills, Sid learned that in wrestling, backstage politics and personal feelings could outweigh talent and toughness. Beyond the spotlight, Hulk Hogan's contributions to professional wrestling are undeniable. His charisma and star power helped bring wrestling into the mainstream, inspiring countless fans and performers alike. But beneath the glitz and glamour lay a more complicated legacy, a story of backstage fear, mistrust, and power struggles. For many wrestlers, Hogan wasn't just a colleague or rival. He was a figure whose influence shaped creative decisions, dictated who rose or fell, and fractured friendships. Understanding these backstage stories offers a richer, more human view of wrestling's golden era, one where the battles outside the ring were sometimes as fierce and consequential as those inside it. Behind every title match and epic showdown, there were real people grappling with loyalty, ambition, and betrayal, navigating a world where the line between friend and foe was as thin as a referee's count. Hulk Hogan was a hero to millions, but to many who shared his world, he was a force to be reckoned with, a man whose shadow still looms large in wrestling history. Want daily knowledge drops? Subscribe now. Your brain will thank you later.